Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And more holiday cards. I am so far keeping up with what I promised and doing at least one holiday card video a month. My aim is to have them posted on or around, let's give myself a little bit of wiggle room, the 25th of each month. And yeah, partly to build up my own stash for this year, as well as to be able to use products that I either have already used, which is today's instance, we'll get to that, or products that I had purchased or were sent to me that I didn't even get a chance to use yet. So this time for today, I am using products I've used before, and specifically this little Cardinal wafer die from Simon Says Stamp. I love him. I honestly thought I hadn't used him. I didn't. I did not think I had used him. And I made my cards, and then I was showing the unpaid intern the cards before I sat down to film this intro. And he was like, "You've used that before." And I'm like, he pays attention. Who'd have thought? Anyway, I went to do my links, and yeah, not only had I used it, I'd also used it with this other wafer die that I love. I love. This is the hanging leaf ring wafer die set. I love this way. I don't know why. I love it. I love it. Anyway, so yeah, somewhat similar. And I'll link to the previous one in the end screen so you can compare. I just kind of laughed at myself. I'm like, instead of ribbon this time though, I used a wafer die, which is newer. So yeah, splatter, very simple ink blending. These were very fun. Like always, I will have links in the description box below the video. I'll have a list with links to everything I used. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It is what helps pay the bills, keeps my heaters running, enables me to continue bringing out content. And then yeah, like I was rambling on at the beginning there, I will continue to add to this series at least once a month, sometimes maybe more. You never know. It just depends on a million different things. But it's been so far so good. So we're still in the early stages of the year, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, that is enough random rambling from me. Let's get into making the cards. So like I said, I'm using the Winter Cardinal little wafer die set. He's just cute and he's the perfect size. I love him. And then the hanging leaf ring wafer die set and the Pinpoint circle background. And then the newer die set, this is the Pretty Bows wafer die set. And yeah, like I tend to do, I did all my die cutting before I started filming because especially with this, all I did was die cut white cardstock. I kept it simple. So I'm using Simon Says Stamp smooth white cardstock. And right now, these are all the pieces that will make the little Cardinal. So I'm stuck them to my grip mat so that I can add color. And yeah, I slap the color on. That's it. I'm not kidding when I say it's simple. I'm using all Pawsitively saturated inks with the exception of the black. The black is it's from the same line, but it's for the Rainbow Splash Black Premium ink. So I think it's got a slightly different formula, but it does the job. So this is definitely something, especially if you don't have like a lot of color cardstock. This is a great way, whether it be ink blending, you could do markers, whatever, to get different colors. Because especially nowadays when we've got all the wafer dyes and layers and all the things, adding ink, that way you can customize it and or just make things if you don't have like red cardstock and yellow cardstock and black cardstock, etc., etc. So anyhow, for the Cardinal, I used 3 shades. I used Punch, Sangria, and Cabernet. And just blend it all out on there. These inks soften and they dry back a bit, so they'll lighten up a bit, but they also blend and smooth out as they dry too. So that's what I mean when I say like just slap the ink on. I don't worry too much about making the blend perfect because it kind of does that on its own. And I like that. Anything to make my job simpler, you know? So after I was done the ink blending for all these pieces, I assembled my little birdie, which very, very simple. to do. Everything just lines up. It just kind of makes sense. So that black piece went on top of the yellow piece, and then I stuck the little eye on there, and then that gets adhered behind the body. And for the wings, that's the smaller one lines up right over the larger one. And then there is an etch line that gets pressed into the body where the wing just lines up. So it makes sense. You can't really see it on camera, but in real life it's just there. So it just lines up. And then these two little pieces for his tail. And then you've got a little birdie. And he's just, I don't know what it is. He's just cute. So I did the same thing with the second bird. Just, again, didn't bother filming that because it's same. And then the greenery pieces from that hanging leaf ring, I also die cut from white cardstock. For these, I'm using cabbage, artichoke, and kale inks. Starting with my lightest, which was the cabbage. Again, just slapped it on. And then I used the artichoke on that smallest piece. And I'm going to add some to this larger leaf sprig. And then I'll take the kale and kind of go over that just to give these, some variation. And then the die cut bows, I also die cut from white cardstock. Could have die cut these from black, but the nice thing about die cutting them from white and then blending this black ink on them is I can create this extra little bit of dimension because I kept the color more concentrated towards the center of it all and let it lighter along the edges. So it just, gave it that little extra something. So set all those aside. I kept most of my little die cut flowers white. These are also from the hanging leaf ring. But the two largest flowers in the cluster, I stuck them to my grip mat, and this is Dew ink. And I used just the smallest of Simon's little blending brushes here just to blend that into the center. And this will also dry back a bit, but it just gives it that little extra something. So I added it only to those ones. And then I also die cut the leaf sprigs from some Nina Desert Storm cardstock, which I'll show in a second. And then my background, I had run through with white cardstock using the Pinpoint circle background, which just pierces all those circle details. And I trimmed it down because it was originally A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I trimmed it down to like 3 3/4 by 5. And then the ring from the hanging leaf ring, I had die cut from Simon's matte gold cardstock because just in my head, I see it as like brass. That's just how I envision the whole thing. So before I adhered it, I ran just some black thread through the top. As you saw, I adhered the ring to the front, pulled the thread around to the back, and then just added a little bit of glue and tape to hold that into place because I mentioned this, I think in the other video when I've used this die. In my head with my OCD, it's like it's hanging from something. It needs something there. Like, it just bugs me. Other makers have used it and they just like have it on their cards and it looks wonderful. And I'm like, I can't do it. I needed to, I need some string or some ribbon or something, it's ridiculous sometimes. Like, this is why I tell y'all, just do as I say, not as I do, because sometimes my OCD gets the better of me and it's just a little bit silly. Anywho, some of those leaf sprigs, like I said, I die cut from Nina Desert Storm cardstock, just to kind of mix it up a bit. And then I adhered everything with craft tacky glue, except for my birdie. Him, I'm going to pop up with some foam squares because I've got quite a bit of dimension going on with the layers of the leaves and the flowers. So the foam squares kind of even everything out. Plus it just pops him up just a bit. So he's just sitting on that little ring. And then I adhered my little die cut bow into place there. And then of course splatter. So we're going to start with some black gouache. So I'm going to put a bit of that onto my palette and I'm going to thin this out a bit with water, and I use my little fan brush, and I'm going to add a fair bit of splatter to this. And like I always say, if you're not into splatter, you can always skip it. I do recommend trying it though. It's fun. It's scary at first. Trust me, it is. It really is, because you can't control it. But it's another one of those things where, once you let loose and have fun with it, it's kind of fun. But again, if it's not your forte, that's fine. If we all liked the same thing, how boring that would be? Anyway, I could go on so many side quests, you guys. Anywho, I let the black splatter dry, and then I'm adding gold splatter using the liquid gold paper splatter watercolor from Pick a Fence Studios. And same thing, use my fan brush, splatter that onto both of these card fronts, and then I'll just let all of that dry. So everything was adhered, everything's been splattered. While that was drying, I trimmed down my sentiments, and I used the reverse typed Christmas sentiment strips from CZ Design. And I'd cut them down with my paper trimmer. And then the two that I'm putting on like the card front, I take a black marker, and this is just a Memento Tuxedo black marker. Any black marker will work for this. And I run this along the edge of these pieces, and that just coats that exposed white cardstock. So it just makes, it's just that like little extra finishing touch. You know, it takes a few seconds, no real effort needed, and it works. It's another one of those things where it's just a very subtle little thing, but it works. So after I had edged the cardstock with that black marker, I put some thin foam squares on the back of it. And then I'm just going to kind of tuck this right kind of underneath that large little floral there and get that kind of shimmied into place, just like so. And then I trimmed down a couple more sentiment strips from that pack to put on the inside of my card. And my card base is a top folding A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And this is the Nina Desert Storm cardstock. So I'm going to adhere my little sentiment strip to the inside. And then I had die cut just little extra bits from the greenery and the florals from the hanging leaf ring. So I adhered the one little leafy bit, and then these little white die cut flowers just to give that inside a little, you know, extra something. So the sentiment strips are, like I said, from that same type, like reverse typed Christmas pack. And I used a different one for each card just because. And then once those were adhered, as my little final embellishment, I'm using the black Pawsitively Everything gems, which are in their little container. So I also get the satisfaction of shaking these. But yeah, these ones are black. So they're not as, you know, iridescent and almost sparkly like some of the other ones, but they do, because they're faceted, they do like reflect light, which is really nice. So I use them as the flower centers, just adhering them into place with little dabs of craft tacky glue, picking them up with my embellishment wand. And then I also ended up adhering them right to the middle of the die cut bows at the top as well. It just kind of worked, you know? So I added one of the medium ones to the bow centers. And once that was adhered, I just got to let the glue dry, and these cards are complete. So we got a birdie, and we got a bunch of splatter. And like I said, very easy ink blending. And now a couple more Christmas cards to add to my stash. So, like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below. I'll link to the other video I did using the set that I had literally forgot about, which I'm kind of surprised, but yeah, you know, I do put out a lot of content and I make a lot of cards, so it happens. Anyway, I'll link to that video, and I'll link to this current series. You guys can check that out if you're interested. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!